Would you like to summarize, Jeff?
Yep, sure.
Read your memo
I hope this will somewhat restore your faith in me. Really, I'm on your team, even though I may not have looked like that earlier. So what I've come up with is an idea, and it's not original, by the way, and I'll show you in a second why it's not original, to make the current gangway, which is located right here, accessible at all tide levels. The gangway that we have now is not accessible at low tide, probably for a couple hours around low tide. It's difficult for people who may have mobility limitations to go up and down that gangway safely. One solution is to do something like this, where you have a switchback installation. The upper gangway, at low tide, you'd be walking down the upper gangway to a landing that is elevated to about half the total tide elevation, and here the total tide elevation is about 14 feet, so the top of that landing, which would be floating still, is about 7 feet above low tide. So, and the gangway length is about 75 feet in this illustration. So at low tide, as I said, you're walking down the upper gangway, hitting the landing, turning and walking down the lower gangway down to the dock here where the existing gangway lands. At high tide, you're actually walking up the upper gangway to the landing, but again down the lower gangway to the existing dock.
If there's a cruise ship in, where is the cruise ship?
It'd be right in this area here where the boat is. So it's very convenient for people to get up. The slope that I'm projecting right here is a 1 in 10, but it probably could be maybe 1 in 12, which will go a little bit longer. Something else I'm not showing here is that there's the potential for another gangway to come off the right side of this landing and head towards the marina, which also has the same gangway problem there. Low tide is difficult to traverse. I'm not showing it on this plan, though. So this is an example of a floating gangway that's in place. This is from Bremerton, Washington Marina. And here's exactly what I'm proposing you do is come down one gangway to a floating landing and then go down to the second floating landing. They actually have, this is really a complex system here. This is also floating. No, excuse me, this is not floating. This is a fixed landing here because instead of stairs you can't see off the back here. But they have a double gangway that goes up to the main level that rises and falls with the tide. This is a close-up picture of the gangway at that marina. And this illustrates some possible obstructions. I'm standing on that slip looking back towards the gangway that's there now at low tide. And I'm pointing out a couple possible obstructions to the lower gangway that would go down there. I'm not sure there's enough clearance to clear this. This could be dealt with. This is just wood pilings that could be cut back if necessary. But I think if this idea is going to go forward, you need to take a look at this. Have somebody take a look at this and see if this is going to be an obstruction. And if it is, can it be dealt with? Is there another way you can get that lower gangway to pass that safely? That's all I have to show you.
So would you show, Jeff, as an ADA approved gangway, what the example would be?
Yeah, doing something like this has potential for installing a compliant gangway at all tide levels.
The next big project on the waterfront that the town is going to be looking at is replacement of that dock system to make a year-round installation for the floating docks. It's a substantial investment, and if this idea was something that the council wanted to consider as part of that proposal, you could look at a design that had that as a an add-on, meaning you can select depending on, I mean, if it turns out that it costs $2 million to do this, then you're not going to be able to, it's going to be very difficult to justify that addition for that amount. But since we're looking for substantial grant monies for this, this may actually help the proposal if there's an accessibility component that also is a proposed part of the installation. So as we move forward with that, looking at that project, it would be an opportune time to consider this or have it evaluated in a way that gives us the means to know whether it would, number one, it can be done based on the severe title change that we have here and what that would be. So this was Jeff's idea, and it, you know, we're looking to improve the waterfront, and this would be
We could also see if we could accommodate the marina as well instead of two systems.
The marina part is the, as we add on to
Move
that,
over.
that would be looked at.
You'd be killing two birds with one stone, making both the marina and the town dock accessible.
More accessible, yeah.
Anybody have any comments?
Well, is there a possibility of, like, for the handicap accessibility part of it, is to go further back up into the parking lot area and making a longer ramp that would change the slope, possibly? Yeah, this is kind of like this here. This is your floats. This is your existing ramp. If you did something way up here and came all the way down along there, does that change the elevation? Because you're stretching it over a longer.
Keeping the floating docks in the same place where they are.
Right. So what you do is you go, for a handicapped accessible, you go back up into the parking lot a little bit further.
So you mean to do it in one run of gangway?
Yes.
And
But
do it
it's-
so that the gangway is always compliant with accessibility
Yes.
standards?
Yes.
Well, there's two things. That would take a very long gangway, and
yeah, it
also
would.
require
It
you
would.
to excavate because you have that level of the parking lot there, or the main, the paved area of the pier. Your gangway would need to be lower than that level in order to make it compliant all the time, and it would need to be very long. I think that approach probably would be much more costly to do than.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, but anyway.
Move the floating docks out.
Well, then that becomes an issue with a whole lot of things.
You've got the bollards, I mean, the what do you call them? Dolphins.
Dolphins,
Dolphins are fixed.
I mean, who would engineer this?
Well, the engineering that's going to be necessary for permanent dock locations would.
Can we take it to them and see what they...
Well, what I'm saying is that if you decide to, when you decide, because it's my understanding that the permanent dock is pretty much something that we've decided that we're going to seek grant funding for and all of that, that if you add this component as an offshoot, that your cost to do that for evaluation purposes is an engineering evaluation of, number one, whether you can do it in this location, given without moving dolphins and doing a bunch of other stuff. But so
It
that
seems to me now is the time to take a look at it and see if it's, one, feasible, and two, the cost of doing so along with the bigger project.
Because we need a number for the grant, right? So we need... Yeah, but now would be the
an
time.
evaluation. Yeah.
And try best to incorporate the two so they work, so it works for both.
The existing, the closest part of the marina dock now is, scaling it on Google, is about 140 feet from that proposed landing area. And the gangways I'm showing here are about 75 feet long, so you would need to extend the marina with floating docks, to get close enough so that another 75-foot length of gangway could rest on the floating docks there. I'm told that the water there is too shallow for dockage purposes, but a floating dock probably would work there for walking purposes to get from the gangway to wherever you're going.
These are aluminum.
Yeah, typically they're aluminum. Yeah.
What's the, any other thoughts about recommending this to we would recommend it to the council to recommend it
Well,
to the project
what
team?
it would, if this committee wishes, that it would be included in the proposal when the permanent dock proposal comes before the council as a consideration. You know, that when that project comes to you to
So we need a
spend money
motion.
to design,
We need a
yeah,
motion from the committee.
to
Do we
include
wanna make a
this.
motion?
What? I'd like to make a motion to look into getting an engineer to look at various different options that would make that handicap accessible. I mean, maybe an engineer would come up with even a better idea than what we've been floating around.
I agree.
And
It'd be
is there
worth
any reason
spending
why we
it.
couldn't vote? I mean, we're submitting the proposal anyway for the project, right, the marina.
You mean to try to do both at the same time?
Well, in other words, you have somebody look at it from the standpoint of can we engineer it as it is, but also
Yeah, but just the,
include it with the project as to get an estimate of cost.
Well, the time at which permanent handicap accessibility is created will be when you do that dock project, because it would, depending on the cost of what you were doing, you would have to undo it all once you put the permanent.
It was gonna change the
Docks, yeah.
existing ramp anyway.
It's gonna change things in a way that would make that so. If you had an evaluation of how to make what we're going to be doing there with permanent docks handicapped accessible, you might have something that resembles the option that Jeff found, or something that there may be several ways to do handicapped accessibility. I don't know what they might be given the title change, but it would be an evaluation of that in order to include accessibility with the dock project. It would be the goal of it in some way to do that.
This idea also too does not include removing the existing gangway. That still can be kept in place and used. At high tide, it's a shorter route to get to the town dock than having to go down the switchback gangway. So the switchback gangway would be advantageous for when you're at low tide, and a couple hours around at low tide.
mhm. So
You wanna-
a motion to,
Well, we've got one
Evaluate?
motion. Do you want to, based on that conversation, amend that, or do you want to stick with just evaluate, your motion just evaluate the one option, or evaluating the whole thing together?
I'd like
and find the best.
the whole thing together.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to evaluate the whole project, look at the most economic, feasible way to make the
Town dock.
town
More accessible.
All those in favor? Vote. All right, the next agenda item, let's go back to the top, the camera project discussion.
Jim Morrill is here from RSU 25, our IT provider, and who has also done the work on looking at our camera. Our current, he can explain this, but our current camera system is non-functional for all intents and purposes, and as part of the settlement with Mr. Green, we agreed to put cameras on the walkway adjacent to the Fort Knox Inn. And in looking at that and how to do that, this proposal restores a camera system to functionality that currently is not function, not just behind there, but in all over it. The floor is
Sure.
yours.
And it goes from analog to digital. Is that-
Correct. And that's one of the big things right now is in order to send it over a network, our cameras are analog, like you mentioned. So it runs on a copper wire like the coax on your TV for cable. So we have conversion boxes in 3 locations that have to convert that to digital, then send it out through what we call air gap, which is basically wireless from a point to a point looking at each other. And an evaluation of the camera system, I found that our air gap system is actually very solid, very reliable. The problem is it's older technology and can't move the bandwidth. So one of the challenges we have when we move to IP cameras is that the image is better. So it takes more to transmit and more to store it. So if you think of a bandwidth as the pipe that you have to transmit information, right now we're choked because of what we have. The system we're opening up increases about tenfold, and by estimates of calculators that are online and my research, we'll use about half that bandwidth. So it gives us expansion. That also gives us high resolution images. You know that working with the police department, we reviewed some incidents down on the waterfront, and sometimes we're missing video because it loses signal because of the fact we're pumping so much through at a time. And oftentimes we'll get a silhouette, so we can confirm a person was in the area. That's helpful because it gives us the time frame, but it's not the same as the proposed cameras are at least 4 times better at the lowest resolution and up to 12 times better depending on where we've applied that camera. So that would allow us to actually get a face shot, a license plate. Night vision right now is about 65 feet on our better cameras, and the ones that we have for longer range will be 197. So we're trying to match our camera resolution with the distance that we have to have and the night vision that we'll need as well.
And then
So,
you need a larger server, more robust server, I would guess.
yeah, so we're going to be, so the biggest box, you're absolutely correct. I should just have you up here with me because you're all over it. But we will pick up an OptiView. OptiView is the brand we've been using. And my time in the town started about 10 years ago as a reserve patrolman. And that same device is still sitting in the public safety building. And it's ran well, except now we just need something more. We've lost some components in it, but the box itself has run very well. And OptiView as a company has come into the digital age full force. So basically what we do is we end up having what they call an NVR box, which is a network video recorder. And we can stick it in any one of our buildings. It could go down to the marina, it could go here, it could go down to the police department. My assessment would be to put it in this building here in our network room, and then all the cameras would record to it, and then the police department would be able to see it from where they are. That's the other aspect of that is now that we increased our internet access back in April, when we found out we had to split from the RSU, that we actually have the ability to send traffic into us if it's beneficial to us. So we could actually have that recording device here, and Chief Gagan, when he's at home, if he needs to research something, he could actually log into it, look at it, and it's still our network.
There's 30 days of storage.
30 days of storage is my expectation.
What happens after that? Is there a
It starts to
way back
rewrite
up
itself.
somewhere? Is there a way to back up what's there?
It-
Or is
It is, but my caution to you is that the NVR that we are purchasing, my proposal has us filling every bay in there with an 8 terabyte drive. So if you think about it, most of us use about 200 gigs. So we're going to go 5 times that to get to a terabyte, and then we're going to go 60 times that for our data storage. And a lot of that comes with resolution of the camera. We're going from 960 resolution, which is less than high def, to in some cases we're looking at a 12 megapixel camera, which allows us to go 300 feet to get a license plate, possibly even an ID badge on someone's chest or something along those lines. So it does bring in multiple pieces of technology. One of it is a fisheye camera. So the scope of this has included the waterfront replacement and upgrade, as well as the town, or I should say the town office. So cameras inside the town office will be replaced in the system as well. So like the one we have here that monitors the council chambers when it's vacant would be one that we replace. I've also proposed, if you look at the listing of cameras, what's called a fisheye camera up in the lobby. Right now our coverage in the lobby, I won't go over specifics, but could improve, and we can do all of it with one camera. We can see 8 directions at once, plus an overhead image if we had motion. So again, technology to our advantage, that one camera costs as much as 3, but we get the use of 4, 5, or 6 cameras. And where it is on our network, it does not take any of the internet access unless someone from outside our network logs in. So the example I use, if Chief Gagan was to log in, he would use some of our internet access going out, but for the most part it's contained inside our system, which even though we split from the school unit, our internal network is just as large as it ever was, because we literally have the same hardware that the school department does. So we can stick a
it's not
lot
going to
of
drag
data.
any of the internet.
Right. Unless we had 8 or 10 people, which I wouldn't expect that many people to have access from the outside, coming in to see the server, we won't see any impact at all. And internally, like I was talking about that pipe that we have, it triples when you get into our fiber network between the buildings from what we would be broadcasting across here. So the other factor of this is it reduces us, if we look at our current solution, you're going to see that up on the screen, yellow indicates what our air gaps are, and red are existing cameras. So we have 10 of those yellow dots here as we move across the waterfront. And like I said, those parts have actually been functioning well for us. They just cannot contain that digital data that we're trying to force it across. So we have to keep resetting components and restarting it to get the camera to flow through. So when we get over to the proposed solution, we go down to actually 5 points, which gives us less points of failure and actually gives us some redundancy. So if we look at our access points, instead of 10, we're now down at 5. And you can see this stretch here, the 1,337 feet, is a long distance for doing an air gap that we're proposing, except the hardware that we already have existing at the marinas is set up for 5 kilometers. So it can do 3 times what we're looking at there. And I have that image there out to one of our vendors who deals with the equipment that I proposed to verify what nodes we need. Because I don't want to overbuy. I want to make sure we're where we are, maybe a little bit more. But I don't want to buy a $500 endpoint if a $200 endpoint is going to do what we need it to do.
Is there a service maintenance agreement in the estimate?
When we pick up the recording box itself, we'll have a 3-year warranty on it with the first 4 hard drives. After that, the hard drives went up at $350 a unit, and I can buy them and install them for $205. So once you start doing that 14 times, I didn't think it justified picking up the warranty on the drive when we could replace it for the cost at that point. So the machine itself will have a 3-year warranty through OptiView. Dave Hewins, who's been our phone contractor, would be our contract to purchase this, and that the proposal does include a day's worth of work for him to set up the cameras, get them online, make sure the NVR is working properly, and he'll warranty his work. So if we can log in from a remote access, I can call him and he'll help us out with that. He also asked us that he help us put up the cameras. And I explained to him that one of the reasons why the RSU and the town have collaborated is that we have more labor hours. So I have the ability to take 1 or 2 technicians with me and do a lot of that work that we don't have to pay an outside vendor to do because it's all part of our contract. But he said he would help the final termination to make sure they're in sync for us.
No.
So the system would be expandable. The next step would be ideally wiring each of the buildings together. So the police department, we're looking at upgrading some of their cameras there as well. And so right now they would have one system they're looking at for the waterfront and the town office, and their building would be monitored by the existing system that they have in place. But as we convert over, that'd all be one interface. Even though they're stored in 2 places, or say the town garage could be a 3rd location, and we can size up our hardware depending on what we need, it'd be all one interface for the user. And we can give access to permissions. So the chief would have everything that we needed. Someone that works at the town office, authorized by Sue, would give them town office coverage. It may be sensible for Rich Rotella to have at least part of the marina area. That's another thing here in the coverage. It adds cameras to overlook the docks. We currently have the bay camera that people love to use, but it's not recorded, and if people can move it, we can't position it. So the proposal does also include 1 camera overlooking the floating docks, so that if there was an issue, a complaint, a safety violation, a crime that occurred, we'd have something indicating at least a lead for law enforcement. Not included in the price, but at the bottom of that sheet you'll see that there's a couple cameras that I recommended or that were optional. One is a fisheye camera we were talking about in the lobby of the marina. I know oftentimes the guys are out fueling the vehicle, they're very good about closing the door, but if someone was to slide in there, if we came up with anything missing, it could exonerate our staff and or tell us that somebody was in the building, as well as covering their parking lot. 2 other ones we spoke about, of course, talking to Sergeant Winchester, thinking about the motor vehicle crash with injury we had during the Bay Festival, is if we had 2 stationary cameras overlooking Main Street. That's a tool he could have used. So it's not necessarily something we would use looking for activity, but it may be something to follow up. If we had crimes along Main Street, motor vehicle complaints, things along that nature. That's completely optional, kind of going down the ballpark. Some of the systems or options we would have with a system like this.
And there's also cameras to cover in back of the Fort Knox Plaza.
Yes. And if we delay this project or if we do something different or go back to the drawing table for it, that'll still be a focus, because we've got to get that done. We agreed to that. We're legally bound to that. So we've come up with a quasi-temporary solution to get that covered in the meantime.
Yes, he's requested that instead of doing this, that we just pay for 2 cameras to tie into his existing camera system, and that was not the agreement was so that the town could monitor the walkway behind it, and so
In my conversation, it sounds like he was happy when I told him that the police department dispatcher will be monitoring these cameras inclusive of the other ones we look at.
He's changed his mind.
Oh, okay.
And do we have a reserve account, or how do we pay?
Yeah, this would come out of the waterfront. Yeah. And we're committed to at least 2 of them,
Right.
and the usability of the remaining ones is,
Not good.
unless
better
you
than
decide
nothing.
you don't want it, you just don't want to have a system, you need to do something to it. This analog digital impasse that we have is,
A big part of that's the data storage. And once I started adding up how much data we would store, I actually got surprised by it. So I want to make sure we size it for at least 30 days of storage.
I know from the banking perspective,
Right.
we run into that all the time, so.
Yeah, data's data and adds up fast.
Comments from the public? Jim?
Do we presently have this technology in the schools?
We have a variation. This is where the schools are sliding. Again, I don't want to get into the details there. For possibly congressional monies sitting on the horizon, it'll be similar. What we have currently is similar to what the schools have later on. Our aspects would be that the police department would be able to patch into the school department through one interface as well.
This is a lot better system that you're talking
22
about
Right.
here.
cents plus if you
Yeah,
don't
you would upgrade the schools so that this system could all be compatible with that one.
Correct. As monies are available, we would
What
have.
other locations in town do you
It's
feel?
also out here for more explanation.
At this point, the only thing I've been addressed is the waterfront. I have not expanded past that, other than replacing the existing cameras in public spaces.
Why have we chosen that rather than, say, buying Dunkin' Donuts or where possibly something could get stolen or something like that, or maybe some of the other businesses in town? And we decided to just do the waterfront at this state.
I think the waterfront, this is being addressed because of the current systems that are in place. It doesn't preclude us at some point in time taking up other systems if that becomes
Right,
something that
and
we
this,
feel
and this system
necessary.
that he's putting in has the capacity to go ahead and expand to that degree.
It sounds to me like it has a greater capacity, so.
It does. As we add on, the biggest thing is data storage,
Right.
and where we have network reach.
So where we add cameras, where we have reach, we potentially would have to
Would be
add in the
infinite.
back end of it. But
Yeah.
to your question, if it becomes something that we think is a security issue, something that we think is important enough, we could add on to this new system and put one out at the Dunkin' Donuts area or some other location. But this was just addressing the current locations where they exist right now, where they're not properly working and not
Right.
capable. Any other comments? Okay, anybody want to make a motion on this?
To refer this to the
To
council
refer this to the
for,
council?
Yep, second.
Okay, we have a motion second to refer this purchase of a new recording system, video system, to the full council. All those in favor? Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Jim.
The next item on the agenda is the request to purchase map 33, lots 66 and 67. David Carlo.
Yes, you remember some time ago, we put out for bid a list of foreclosed properties, and on that list, there were a number for which we got no bids, because they are either were very tiny lots, or there were access issues, meaning they were somewhat landlocked, and in one case, there's a lease on some of the land. And anyway, there were issues, and so I had indicated that we would work with the abutters to see if there was interest. Mr. Carlo is an abutter to these map 33, lot 66 and 67, which were purchased, interestingly enough, through a foreclosure action with the town in 2011. And which, from the date of purchase to now, have never paid another dime in taxes and are not able to be located anywhere for that. So the amount of taxes that has accumulated since 2011 is far in excess of the annual taxes, which are between $100 and $200 a year. Mr. Carlo was offered $750 for these 2 lots, and I'm recommending that you accept this and add these 2 small lots to his parcel to make it 1 lot, and that ends the access issue over a discontinued road, puts it in a collectible, and that you accept the $750 and write off the balance of these that will.
Yeah, it's right behind, what was that path?
Central Lane or Central.
Yeah, there used to be a bridge across the stream there. Yeah, that's not, I don't see any good access there.
Well, it abuts it. I talked to Jeff Fitzgerald about it, who agreed that he would combine them into 1 lot if the
Yeah,
council
we
did
don't
that.
want, we won't have any legal fees to do this, combining of the lots or anything.
No, he just does it on
Tax map.
for the tax map.
Rather than writing off, there's no cost to the town.
I mean, you have to release the deed, though.
Well, yeah, you would issue a quick claim,
Okay.
but
Just
all
like you
that
would with
does,
any tax acquired.
like you do with any tax-acquired property, obtaining clear title beyond that is the purchasers. This one, and there's 2 others, and it's in my, that the small Edna Irving, those camps out that you have to go into Orrington to get to, those went out, and those have the same access. You go through literally through somebody's driveway to down a path to get them. Jeff Fitzgerald has contacted all of the abutters and asked for interest, and we have 2 bids on those thus far. So that will be coming forward. And I had a call this afternoon that the 50 Flanders Way, which is the combination home and St. Francis lease and all that, that there's someone that is working with them to buy the rest of that property, and asked if the town would accept payment in full for the taxes for that. And I indicated that I was sure the council would be in favor, because that's one that has got all sorts of issues, and if that were done, so that we're narrowing down the list of foreclosed, difficult, not able to do it. So anyways, those will be coming forward, but this one for the up to main assets one, instead of the list is this long, we would reduce our outstanding list by a huge amount by accepting this with an entity that's a current abutter and.
So a motion to
taxes.
recommend the council to,
It's on the agenda. It's on the agenda for that, but the committee recommends that resolve be.
motion.
Second, to recommend to the council. All in favor? Opposed? The last one on here is the proposed changes to town sign allowing banners. Yep.
You all may know that I have the responsibility of putting banners up and taking them down on the banner poles down by the bridge. This past summer I was asked to put a banner up down at the west end of Main Street. I'd never done that before, but I think they have been put up. Typically they're put up, they're typically put up with driving wooden stakes in the ground, and that never holds up very well. The banners start to sag.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, there must be a better way. So I looked at this sign, actually, which is located there, and thought that perhaps that might be a suitable base to erect the banners on. So I have, just to show you an idea, if you want to move forward with this, it may turn out to be something totally different than this, but this shows some additions to put on either side of the banners, and the reason for that is the existing poles are about 5 feet apart, but you have sometimes 8-foot long banners. So this, by doing something like this, it widens it to 8 feet. And when you have that width, you're able to do something like this. I should think a little bit smaller.
What are most banners, 8 feet, something like that?
Yeah, right. So, and this illustration shows 2 8x3 banners. That's the typical size banners that we put on the banner poles, 3 feet tall, 8 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
They would be held on with bungee cords like they are down at the other end of Main Street. And this all can be done from the ground because it's only 6 feet off the ground, so it's reachable without ladders. I'll show you. We actually tried this. The Art Festival banner, which is only 6 feet wide, fit on those poles there. So just to show you what it might look like in reality, that worked out very well. So my suggestion to you is to consider doing something like I'm suggesting by widening that post, and it would be a permanent installation. And then as the banners come up, they would be put up and taken down by the town.
How much did it cost to put those poles up down by the bridge?
I have no idea. That's not a
I
long
mean, it
time
would be
ago.
nice if it,
Something more substantial, metal to
Yeah.
match it.
it would be kind of matching. Both ends would be matching as opposed to, and leave the sign that's there as it is.
I don't know where you'd put those, though. I don't know if there's enough room in that little nook to put 2 banner poles that are 8 feet wide, 8 feet apart.
Down below the pump station.
I'm
Possibly.
not sure where town property ends there.
Yeah.
This, I believe, is in the. Well, this is probably DOT property.
Yeah, who owns that weird turnout there? You know, it's right below this.
Used to be part of the mill
Was the mill?
property. Yeah. I'd like to at least look at the fact of having continuity between the 2 sign poles, the east end and the west end. But if it can't be done,
See if we can find a spot and what the
Yeah.
cost would be.
yeah.
So, anything else? What the
We
recommendation?
can look at
to
more
the-
information, we can see if there is a location. we
Right.
can-
So, rather than bring it to the council tonight, just recommend it out and look at
Yeah,
it.
this is not on the agenda for tonight. This would be referral for future, if you want to do this, we could get more information on,
And do we have any information on what those poles were down there and how they were set and all that?
They're set on concrete footings.
Okay.
They're about 12 feet tall, I believe. Yeah. It's a pretty substantial structure.
And those are in the DOT right away? Or,
Yes, they are. Yeah.
so could we get something else in the right away down on that end?
What do you mean?
On this end of town?
Well, yeah, if there's enough room, it might be possible, but I'm not sure there is enough room there. The land drops off pretty fast right there.
Mhm.
So just to the right side of the right column there, it's a steep bank.
Right.
And I think that follows the rest all the way down to the mill entryway there. It's pretty steep, so.
But we have the pump station there, we have the Welcome to Bucksport, or whatever those granite things where the flowers are and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I mean, is there any flat area in there where we could?
We'll take a look at it and see.
Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like, any comments from the public? Sounds like this is, take it back, get some more information, and then we'll look at it in the future. I think we've covered them all, right? Take a motion to adjourn?
Second?
I take a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to
Second.
adjourn.
We have a motion, a second to adjourn, all in favor?